Well, thank you, Ms. Rivers. Very powerful testimony, and obviously that is the goal of this committee hearing, is to try and work towards solutions so this doesn't happen to another American. My question is, so you've been removed from the death master file. Was that prompted by your action? Do you know when that occurred, or have you just found out that it just happened?
Actually, and you'll find this a bit funny, I only found out that it happened in the last couple of weeks, that I was actually listed on the death master file in 2008. Check Systems had the one person that answered my letter sent me a letter that was dated August 22nd. The reality is I was still sending them correspondence in October and further. But in this letter, it stated that they had reported me as deceased upon information received from the Social Security Administration, and that I had died in 2008.
But again, there wasn't a process you were working with the Social Security Administration where you filled out some forms and you knew that your name was removed from the death master file?
Yes, sir.
You did go through that process?
Several times.
But you only just found out that you've been removed?
Yes, sir. I had the letter, but unfortunately, since the letter said, send us all of your information and we will do an investigation, I actually missed the part that they said, we did report you as deceased in October, and they didn't tell me the year.
Okay.
We did report you as deceased, and based on the information from Social Security, you died in 2008. And then asked me to send them information, and they would do an investigation.
Okay. Well, we'll ask some of those questions of our other witnesses. And again, I would encourage everybody to read Ms. Rivers' full testimony. It's a powerful story. Senator Carper. I was actually going to point out the fact that Mr. Bertoni has joined the panel here, so he is the Director of GAO's Education, Workforce, and Income Security team, and he might assist in answering questions. And I'll start with questions with Mr. Brune. Prior to coming here today, did you take a look at Ms. Rivers' case just to find out exactly what the status is with her current status?
Senator, the news media did not share the case with us beforehand. I did know that Ms. Rivers was testifying today. I did not look at the specifics of her case. I think it would be unwise to discuss that in an open forum, but I'd be happy to answer questions about the scenario.
Fair enough. How many people are you aware of are in Ms. Rivers' position?
Fewer than 9,000 a year have that circumstance happen to them. Usually, Senator, we learn of the occurrence by the individual reporting it directly to us. We advise the individual that we can correct that if they'd visit our office. As Ms. Rivers identified, we request that an individual bring several proofs of identity with them, including a state-issued form of identity, a birth certificate if they have one, so that we can correct the record. And when the individual leaves our office, we issue them a letter indicating that there was an error and that it's been corrected.
So the name may be removed from the death master file, but the effects continue to linger, correct? Can you just describe what happens there with credit agencies and banks and credit card companies?
Sure. Well, the Social Security Administration shares the public death master file, as Ms. Davis just indicated. That does not include state data. Still around 84 million records with the Department of Commerce. Commercial entities can procure that record, that database, from the Department of Commerce. It is widely used across not only government, but the commercial sector as well. The Department of Commerce requires parties that receive that information to subscribe to updates, but sometimes I would suspect all entities who have looked at a death master file have not looked at the most current death master file.
So how often do you update your death master file with Commerce?
Weekly.
Weekly. And how often are the commercial entities required, supposedly, to update those files?
Depends on the contractual arrangement that an entity has with the Department of Commerce.
Can you just kind of describe how somebody who's listed on a death master file, how identity thefts can create fraud with those names? I mean, I can understand the master file is published, and people can quickly try and claim a tax refund with that Social Security number, which is why now the law states that that information is going to be held with 3 years. But how else is that fraud committed?
Well, I think our Inspector General might be in a better position to answer
Mr. O'Carroll.
Yes, Chairman. One of the ways that we're finding that the fraudsters are doing it is what they'll do is they'll go to one record that's out there, for example, a state record listing all the deceased people in it, and then they'll go and they'll take a look at one of the death master file on it and see if a person's alive in one record and then dead in the other record on it. And then what they'll do is they'll claim to be that person and then go after their benefits. So that's one method of it. And as we know in other cases on it, what they'll do is they'll adopt the name and the information of the person and then file for credit on it and default.
Mr. Brune, have we considered, is there a law that prevents you from doing this? Why don't we just purge the death master file from anybody over a certain age?
Let me first say, Senator, the records in the death master file we procure largely from the states. The primary reporters are state bureaus of vital statistics, the individual's family members, doctors. The database contains over 100 million records.
Okay.
It's been in existence since we began approximately 80 years ago. The record-keeping processes, as you might imagine, have evolved over 80 years. Our current program policy requires evidence of death. The risk in just doing a blanket update or blanket change in data is that it's highly likely that we would create another scenario just like Mrs. Rivers, because in the IG's report, they identified in that group of 6.5 million, there were in fact living individuals. The reason that is because oftentimes individuals who are auxiliaries on the record, spouses, children, et cetera, are listed under a number, and they're connected in our databases, but the way we connected them in years past is not as accurate as it is right now. So it's possible that while the primary number holder may be deceased, there's records linked to that that are not are of records of individuals that are not deceased. So the primary reason we don't do that is that we want to prevent any inadvertent additions to the DMF of individuals who are still alive.
Well, Mr. O'Carroll, I mean, we are talking about how many people over 112 that you identified?
6.5 million, Chairman.
Right, on the num-ident file, correct? I mean, that's where we need to purge these. This is where we
Yes.
want to put in a date of death, basically, correct?
Correct.
But how many people that actually are living today that are over 112?
Well, one of the records that we have is that in one of SSA's databases, it'll show them as deceased, and then another database, it'll show them alive, and there's 1.4 million of them. And then on that, we haven't really set any number in terms of the actual living on it. We go on the fact that we use the estimate, sort of similar to Mr. Brune, of about 1,000 a month living people report that they're alive when they're on the death master file.
But again, those would be much younger people, so I'm still not getting a good answer to my question. Why don't we just purge the num-ident, or list on the num-ident a date of death for people that are over, I don't know, let's start with 150. And then maybe next month we knock it down to 140, then 130, and have some sort of, obviously, protection for somebody that just might, again, when we're talking about 6.5 million records out there, obviously there's about 6.499999 million of those people that really are dead and aren't going to be affected by this. But why don't we do that to prevent the type of fraud that this type of situation occurs or allows?
Well, correct, Chairman, on that. One of our recommendations on it is just as you're saying with purging it, one of the thoughts on it is SSA could just make a notation on each of those files of people over 112 years of age and make that notation kind of as like a person if you had to get a replacement Social Security card. So let's say you're a battered spouse, you need to get a new Social Security number for security reasons. They put a record on your record, a notation or a spin, and it shows that that record is that you have two Social Security numbers. what we're recommending is why don't they just put a record like that on all the people over 112 years of age? So that way, it, one, would reflect them as deceased, but also, two, as if accidentally somebody who had a birth date of, let's say, 1957 and was keyed in as 1857, when they realized that they, were losing benefits listed as deceased, SSA it'd be easy for them to repair it.
So can Social Security Administration do that themselves administratively, or do you need Congress to pass a law to allow that to happen?
Senator Johnson, we are currently in the analysis phase of doing just that. The audit was issued approximately 10 days ago. The good news is Mr. O'Carroll and his team have looked at this topic previously. So we had analysis prior to the audit's release, which was coming along. So far, we've been able to electronically verify data and update 200,000 records based on prior audits. We're currently initiating the review of those 6.5 million records. We're hopeful that there's information in our data set that will allow us maybe not to confirm the actual date of death, but to confirm that an individual is deceased and that individual's SSN can be marked as such.
When you complete your analysis and you need legislative fix for this, please come to us as quickly as possible. Senator Carper. Thanks for holding down the fort here. Not only is our ranking member highly interested in this issue, but he's also a pretty good sprinter. I saw him in the hallway. I've only got a couple questions left. I really want to kind of explore the EDRs and the differences between the states and the data that comes from those. So I don't know who's the best person to talk to about that. Is that you, Mr. O'Carroll? So
Let Sean do the first.
is there a significant, do you have stats in terms of the information coming from states with EDR versus those that do not have EDR?
Yes, we do. There's really two dimensions, both of which I think are important to us and of value in the conversation about improper payments. One dimension is timeliness of reporting, and within the EDR arena, we average a report within 5 days of the date of death, and within 24 hours of when the state becomes aware of it. That's very timely.
And again, those are in the exact format you want it in, correct?
Correct.
It totally matches your database.
Correct. And then for the record, I could provide you what amount of those inquiries do not match when they send us a name and SSN combination, what doesn't match before they report. Now, I want to make sure that I mention that process is that the first step before anything's sent to us is name and SSN match. If that occurs, then we'll get the rest of the information. And if it doesn't occur, it goes back to the reporter in order to double check and make sure they have the correct information, that they didn't miskey something.
So again, from the states that don't have EDR, are you also getting those from their offices of vital statistics, or is that where you're getting things from financial institutions, postals, I mean, all the other?
All of the other. And we could get multiple reports, Senator, even in an EDR state. And it's important to recognize that in those states that have adopted electronic registration, every jurisdiction within the state does not use it equally. And so some jurisdictions, counties or municipalities may be at 100% utilization, others might have a very low rate. And so there is much more work to be done. And part of that, I think, is a reflection of the fact that at the local level, these records were maintained in different formats, and the quality of that data varies.
So you don't have the localities within a state submitting the information to a central, some kind of central data center, and then have those electronic records forwarded to Social Security? You're getting these from multiple sources within a state?
It's up to the state how they send us the information. Usually it does come from a State Bureau of Vital Statistics, but how those entities are organized at the state level varies.
But again, so the 37 states that you get that from, they come from a centralized vital statistics office within the state. You're not getting, they may be getting the information from multiple sources, but they accumulate it and there's just one contact for Social Security within those 37 states?
That's generally true, but it can vary depending on the state.
So what has been the hangup in the 13 other states? I mean, just resistance? Is it funding? I mean, did the other 37 states, did they fund their electronic death records or registries themselves, or?
I would say that funding is definitely part of the equation, and I think that some states recognize that they have more work to do, that the state of their records would require a lot of effort in order for them to get the records in a point where they could send it to us reliably in the electronic mechanism that we request.
Okay, well, I'm all for states' rights, but this might be something that we maybe need to work on. Ms. Davis, I did want to just kind of talk about, exactly how we calculate total number of improper payments. Also verify, my staff's telling me it's about 90% of those improper payments really are overpayments, correct? Or is it about that, or what is your information in terms of overpayments versus underpayments? Because we talk about improper, what's the mix?
We have not done recent work to determine the actual mix. I will say, though, that the majority are overpayments, and there are a number of items, of course, that are classified as improper payments because there is insufficient documentation.
The calculation of the $124.7 billion, that's all through statistical sampling, correct?
Correct. Statistically, let me qualify that statement. It's statistically valid sampling methodologies, but the OMB director, can approve an alternate methodology.
Okay. Well, those are my final questions. I guess I'd like to just go over the panel if there's a particular point you want to make. One point, relatively brief, to close out the hearing. I'll start with you, Mr. Bertoni.
Say, to the extent that the DMF in the Do Not Pay initiative at some point will be made the full file, I think you're running out of time. Every day as more states come onto the electronic system, there are going to be fewer and fewer records in there. And that file is going to become less useful and potentially less accurate. So if that's going to happen, it should be concurrent or in tandem with increasing the accuracy of death data in general.
Thank you. Mr. Brune.
Senator, we're fully committed to maintaining as accurate death data as we can. We're dependent upon the states to report that information. We think fully funding the electronic death registration is the first step to that. We also support the ranking member's bill and would be happy to provide technical assistance on that bill.
Okay, appreciate that. Mr. O'Carroll.
Chairman, once again, my biggest one on it is we asked for exemption to the Computer Matching and Privacy Protection Act for IGs, but by the same token, it should go to the IGs and the parent agency. So as an example, when we do an audit and we can find that there's an issue of one agency making payments when another agency isn't making payments, we can then have the parent agencies make those matches.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mader.
Supporting the various program integrity initiatives in the President's budget.
Thank you. Ms. Davis. By the way, I really appreciate these brief statements. Ms. Davis.
The improper payments legislation requires inspectors general to perform annual reviews of compliance with the criteria in IPERA, and there are a number of issues that they have identified over the last several years. Implementing the recommendations that are made by these inspectors general would go far in helping to reduce improper payments.
Okay. Well, again, I just want to thank all the witnesses for your thoughtful testimony, your thoughtful answer to our question. Ms. Rivers, thank you for sharing your story. And again, this committee is dedicated to making sure this not just a hearing, but something comes out of this. So we want to work very closely with all the departments and agencies so we can, again, prevent the type of situation that Ms. Rivers has had to deal with. The hearing record will remain open for 15 days until March 31st at 5 p.m. for the submissions of statements and questions for the record. This hearing is adjourned.